There are moments in the U.S. Armed Forces that never make it into official reports, moments that don't involve gunfire, night raids, or airstrike coordinates. Sometimes the most defining battles happen quietly, across a desk, in a briefing room, under fluorescent lights humming like a warning. And this story begins exactly like that. At Fort Brenton, one of the most secure intelligence installations on the West Coast, where courage wasn't always measured by battlefield scars, but by the choice to tell the truth when truth threatened careers, reputations, and lives. Fort Brenton didn't wake up, it activated. From 0500 onward, the base pulsed like a machine of steel, discipline, and routine. Boots hitting concrete in synchronized rhythm, Humvees growling in long rows, and the early morning fog drifting low across the training fields like smoke from a battle that never happened. Second Lieutenant Mara Dalton, age 27, moved through that fog with silent purpose. She wasn't a legend, a prodigy, or a troublemaker. She was the kind of soldier who disappeared into her work, precise, disciplined, nearly invisible when she wanted to be. But those who had served with her, really served, knew better. They knew she had a spine made of tempered steel. She had proven it in Afghanistan. She had proven it during the Kabul drawdown, evacuating civilians under mortar fire. But she never talked about those days, not because they hurt, though they did, but because she knew the military had a habit of rewarding the wrong people and forgetting the right ones, and the man responsible for today's trouble was at the top of that list. General Edward R. Maddox, a man with a chest of medals and a whisper trail of rumors, none proven, none punished, a man who smiled like a man who believed consequences were for other people. Today, Mara had been ordered to deliver a classified report to his office, a simple task, on paper. In reality, it was a fuse waiting for a spark. Inside the Strategic Operations Wing, everything smelled of paper, coffee, and duty. Mara walked the long corridor, her uniform immaculate, her jaw tight with the weight of what she carried. Inside her folder was a report prepared by her unit. An internal investigation into unauthorized drone deployments in foreign airspace. Deployments signed off by General Maddox, deployments that had resulted in civilian casualties. And then buried, until Mara's commanding officer, Colonel Raymond Ortiz, decided the truth needed air. "We don't rewrite reality here, Lieutenant," he had told her 2 days earlier. "We report it, whether they like it or not." But Ortiz knew something else. Everyone did. Maddox retaliated, subtly, quietly, efficiently. Careers vanished like vapor. Transfers appeared overnight. Good soldiers suddenly found themselves standing watch in empty warehouses in North Dakota. Mara knew delivering the report was dangerous, but orders were orders. She reached the door marked General E.R. Maddox, commanding officer, and the 2 guards stepped aside. "You may enter," one said. She did, and the temperature of the room felt 10 degrees colder. General Maddox sat behind a polished walnut desk large enough to command its own zip code. His uniform was perfect, his smile was rehearsed. "Lieutenant Dalton?" he said without looking up, signing a document with lazy arrogance. "Ortiz sends a messenger instead of coming himself. That alone tells me this is going to waste my morning." Mara stood at attention. "Sir, I'm here to deliver the findings of—" "I know what it is," he cut in. "I've been expecting this little stunt." He held out his hand. "Give me the folder." Mara walked forward. She set the folder on his desk with quiet precision. Her heartbeat was steady, but her thoughts raced. Maddox opened it, skimmed the first page, his jaw tightened. Then he looked up at her. "You think you understand what you're doing here, Lieutenant? I'm following lawful orders, sir." He chuckled, a low, mocking sound. "No. You're participating in a political hit job, orchestrated by a man who's been jealous of my career since he wore his first pair of boots." He flipped the pages with growing annoyance. "Ortiz wants my command. That's what this is. And you're his courier." Mara didn't speak. Silence was safer. Then Maddox reached into his drawer, pulled out a pen, and shoved it toward her. "Sign the verification receipt," he snapped. "So when this little disaster blows up in his face, I have your name on record as assisting him." Mara stared at the pen. She reached for it slowly, but Maddox's eyes drifted, not to the pen, not to the paper, but to her left hand, to a ring. Silver, simple, worn, A ring with the insignia of the 3rd Recon Battalion. A Marine Recon ring. A man's ring. Maddox froze. His face went pale. Then it hardened into stone. "Where did you get that?" he asked, voice suddenly sharp. Mara blinked. "Sir, that ring," Maddox growled. "Why are you wearing his ring?" Mara steadied her breathing, because now she understood. He recognized it. He knew exactly whom it belonged to. And that changed everything. Maddox stood slowly, rage building in his eyes. That ring belonged to Sergeant Mason Hale. Mara swallowed. Hale, her fiancé, killed in an explosion in Syria 2 years earlier. A mission that was never supposed to happen. A mission whose orders had come from Maddox's office. "Answer me," the general barked. "How do you have it?" Mara's voice remained steady. "I was engaged to him, sir." Maddox stared at her as if she were a ghost, as if she didn't belong in this timeline. "He never told me he was engaged," Maddox muttered. "He never mentioned you." "His personal life wasn't part of his briefing schedule, sir," she replied calmly. Maddox's lip curled, and then something else flickered across his expression. Recognition, not of Mara herself, but of who she reminded him of. The woman who had filed a complaint against him 10 years ago. The soldier he'd discredited and quietly transferred until she resigned. Mara Dalton looked like her. Same fire in the eyes, same unbreakable spine, and Maddox hated that. Maddox stepped around the desk, moving so close Mara could smell his cologne. Sharp, expensive, suffocating. "You think wearing his ring gives you some moral high ground?" he hissed. "You think this makes you some hero finishing his legacy?" Mara said nothing. "You're a child playing in the war of men," he growled. "And I am giving you one chance to walk out of this room and pretend this never existed." He held up the report. "One chance." Mara inhaled slowly. "Sir, with respect." "I have my orders." "No," he snapped. "What you have is a delusion that the truth matters here." He leaned closer, voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "In this building, truth is a luxury. Power is the currency." Mara met his eyes. "Then I choose the truth anyway." The air froze. The room felt like a pressure chamber. Maddox slammed the folder down on the desk. "You're going to destroy your career, Lieutenant?" "Maybe," she said softly, "but not my conscience." Before Maddox could respond, there was a shift in the room. A presence. Colonel Ortiz stepped out from the adjoining office, one that had connected to Maddox's office for decades. The connecting door was cracked open, and Ortiz had heard everything. Maddox stiffened. "Ray," he said, forcing a smile. "I didn't know you were listening?" Ortiz finished. "I know. You never do." He walked into the room slowly, his steps deliberate, almost ceremonial. Mara felt a wave of relief, but also fear, because Maddox wasn't the type to give up quietly. Ortiz placed a digital recorder on the desk. Its red light blinked. Maddox's face went the color of ash. "You bugged my office?" Maddox whispered. Ortiz shook his head. "No, Edward. You left the door open. And Lieutenant Dalton here simply gave you enough rope." Maddox lunged for the recorder. Ortiz blocked him effortlessly. "You're finished," Ortiz said quietly. Maddox staggered back like a man punched by a ghost. You can't do this," he stammered. "I built this base. I shaped its doctrine. I made half the officers in this building." Ortiz stared him down. "And in the process, you believed you were untouchable." He picked up the folder. "You authorized operations outside your jurisdiction. You falsified reports. You blamed units that weren't even on the ground." Then his voice softened, dangerously. "And you got Mason Hale killed." Mara flinched. The room blurred for a second. Maddox looked between them like a cornered animal. "You don't understand," he whispered. "You think this was my decision. You think I had a choice." Ortiz raised a brow. Then who did? Maddox's silence was damning. Ortiz exhaled. "This ends now." He nodded toward Mara. "Lieutenant, give me the pen." She handed it to him. Maddox sank into his chair, defeated, watching Ortiz sign the official transmission order, the document that would send the report directly to the Pentagon Inspector General's office. The moment the pen touched paper, Maddox whispered, "You two have no idea what storm you're walking into." Ortiz capped the pen. We've been in storms before. By 1900 hours, Maddox's office was sealed. By 2300, defense investigators were boarding a jet inbound to Fort Brenton. By morning, Maddox's access was revoked. A three-star general, stripped of command, because one lieutenant refused to lie. Mara walked out of the building at sunrise the next day, the sky painted orange and gold like the world was congratulating her. Colonel Ortiz joined her outside. "You did well, Lieutenant," he said. "I just followed orders, sir." He shook his head. "No, you followed your conscience. That's rarer." They stood in silence for a moment. The air was cold, but the sun warmed the edges of the horizon. Then Ortiz added, "Sergeant Hale would be proud." Mara nodded, jaw tight. "I hope so, sir." Ortiz walked away. Mara remained standing in the early morning, quiet. She touched the ring. For the first time in 2 years, it felt light instead of heavy, as if the truth had finally loosened something inside her. She whispered into the wind, "It's done, Mason. It's finally done." And the bass continued its endless rhythm around her, boots marching, trucks rolling, flags waving. But Mara Dalton stood alone with the sunrise, and for the first time in a long time, she felt whole. True courage isn't in battle, but in standing for what's right, even when you stand alone.